They fined me $750 for a rain barrel, called it a visual blight, and taped the violation right on my daughter's swing set. 23 days later, I was sitting across from their attorney with a certified deed they didn't know existed. That was the moment I stopped being the quiet widower they could bully and became the man who ended their little kingdom. I'm Mark Ellison, civil engineer out of Denton County, Texas, where dust still beats Wi-Fi and neighbor used to mean something solid. 2 months after my wife passed, I was just trying to keep the ranch alive for my girl Lucy, 8 years old, all freckles and questions. She thought cows could keep secrets. The HOA didn't think a man like me should still own Lot 17. Their president, Marlene Draper, showed up one afternoon in a linen blazer stiff enough to stand on its own. She looked over my fence and said, "We can't have the Ellison place looking rustic anymore." "Rustic?" I asked. "That fence was built by my granddad in '64. She handed me a glossy binder, 300 pages of community standards, and hinted that a special assessment could help me modernize. I told her I'd modernize when barbed wire went out of style for cattle. A week later, a new notice: unauthorized livestock enclosure, $500 fine, 50 a day if I didn't correct it. I measured it myself, 42 feet inside the setback, fully compliant. I mailed them the survey in triplicate. They ignored it. So I started keeping records. Every letter, every timestamp, every insult. Nights at the kitchen table with a pot of burnt coffee, flipping through covenants like hymnals. I wasn't looking for loopholes. I was looking for truth. Buried deep in Article 9, I found a clause about parcels over 10 acres. Any property with a recorded easement predating the HOA's charter could withdraw with a simple filing. My granddad's livestock water rights were still in my safe, ink faded, but legible. I stared at that paper for a long time. I wasn't ready to use it, not yet. Then the sheriff came. Deputy Collins looked embarrassed to be there. He held the clipboard like it was contagious. "Compliance check," he muttered. "HOA request." He saw the citation curling on the swing set, tipped his hat. "Ain't my kind of law, sir." I thanked him anyway, because manners cost less than pride. But something in me shifted. They'd sent law enforcement to my gate over a rain barrel. I built a red binder labeled HOA retaliation. Anonymous posts calling me feral. Votes to suspend my rights for endangerment. And when Lucy's school bus got stopped at the gate because my dues were under review, that was the moment grief turned into focus. Still, I started doubting myself. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe my wife would have handled it with charm instead of paperwork. I sat at the table staring at that binder, wondering if I should just sell the land and leave the ghosts behind. Then Lucy came in holding a lemonade. "Daddy, why don't they like our cows?" I told her. "Because some folks hate what reminds them they can't control everything." She laughed, small and sweet, and somehow that laugh steadied me more than a lawyer ever could. The next morning I called my friend Nate Foley, a county appraiser who treats property law like poetry. He ran a few plats and said, "They're after your waterline mark. It runs under their new community pond. If that easement's active, they owe you access or compensation." That one line changed everything. They weren't enforcing rules, they were trespassing. I kept quiet, let them think I was a grieving rancher drowning in paperwork. But I started documenting everything with surgical precision. Then I met Caleb, the maintenance foreman. Sunburned arms, honest eyes, grease under his nails. I brought him coffee one morning, played dumb. He sighed, said HOA board ordered a temporary diversion from the old water line. Been that way 2 years. Temporary, my ass. They were stealing water from my easement. That night I took photos of the junction valve, sent them to myself for timestamp. Then I sat with my attorney, Denise Lang, sharp voice, sharper mind. "You've got them by the code," she said, "but don't tip your hand yet. Let them pile on more violations. It'll build your counterclaim." At the next board meeting, I sat 3 rows back in a pressed shirt. Marlene ran it like a queen holding court. "We've issued Mr. Ellison 6 citations totaling $32.50. Continued noncompliance may result in a lien." I raised my hand. Under Texas Property Code R29006, you're required to offer an opportunity to cure before recording a lien. You skipped that step, she smirked. Maybe this community just isn't the right fit for you. That sentence was her mistake, discriminatory tone on record in front of witnesses. I clicked my pen, wrote the time, 14:32. Next morning, I filed a complaint with the county ombudsman. Once under review, they couldn't enforce or collect fines until it closed. A week later, another notice, unauthorized structure chicken coop. I didn't even own chickens. Nate laughed. They're baiting you. Don't bite. So I didn't. I logged, photographed, time-stamped every petty infraction. Then they called for a wellness check through the sheriff. Same deputy, same sigh. Ain't my kind of law. That night, Lucy asked will they take our home, I told her. Not as long as Dad can read fine print. The next month was quiet, too quiet. Then the trucks came. HOA inspectors blocking my driveway, snapping photos of my shed mailbox, Lucy's treehouse. I filmed everything. One-party consent is legal in Texas. The camera caught Marlene saying he'll fold once the lien hits escrow. I didn't fold. I sent the footage to my insurer. They opened a risk assessment on Echo Ridge's liability policy. Denise called it the rope they'll hang themselves with. Meanwhile, I drove to the courthouse and re-recorded Granddad's easement under current statute formatting. The clerk stamped it with a deep thud that echoed down the hall. That sound felt like justice rehearsing. 2 weeks later, the county inspector showed up. Howard's slow-talker clipboard balanced on his knee. Got a complaint about an unpermitted tap. Yours? No, sir, I said. Start behind the clubhouse. He came back 2 days later with a letter violation of county water code fines up to $10,000 a day addressed to Echo Ridge HOA. I didn't file that complaint, but I knew who did. Caleb. The man was tired of being treated like a janitor by people with clipboards. By the time their fines stacked up, I had all the pieces, motive, evidence, witness, law. The last thing I needed was patience. June 3rd, 6 p.m., HOA meeting. I wore the same suit I'd worn to my wife's funeral. Some fights deserve formality. The clubhouse smelled like cheap carpet and arrogance. Residents whispered in small clusters. Marlene started first agenda item, financial transparency. She clicked a slide full of perfect zeros. I stood. Correction, there's a $12,480 disbursement labeled landscaping that matches the county's water violation fine. Murmurs spread. Marlene's smile froze. That's a misunderstanding. I held up the official letter with the inspector's signature. Right on cue, the door opened. Inspector Howard walked in, badge shining. Evening, folks. Verifying records for a complaint follow-up. The silence could have balanced on a pin. I walked to the front table, laid down the stamped deed. And under this easement, recorded 1963, you've been drawing water from private property. Mine. Howard nodded. He's right. HOA will need a new permit or compensation agreement. Someone gasped. Another whispered. She stole his water. Marlene tried to pivot. Mark, this isn't neighborly. We can resolve this privately. I looked her dead in the eye. Private ended when you taped fines to my kid's swing set. The room erupted. Residents shouting, filming on phones, demanding refunds. Mr. Dorsey, the old man from down the road, stood up and said, "We voted for transparency. This ain't it." Howard confiscated their ledgers, announced county review. That was the sound of her empire cracking. I walked out into this Texas dusk air, thick with cedar and diesel. Caleb met me by my truck. Didn't even raise your voice, he said. Paperwork does the shouting, I told him. By morning, 3 board members resigned. Marlene clung to her title, sent one last email about misinformation. The insurance company froze their policy. Within 48 hours, Echo Ridge HOA was legally paralyzed. I didn't celebrate. I just stood on my porch binder under my arm, watching the windmill creak like it was laughing. Lucy ran up holding a wooden sign she'd painted herself. Home Sweet Home. The letters crooked bright blue. I hung it on the fence, 2 inches taller than regulation used to allow. And that's the thing about power. It only works when people believe it's real.